9 podcasts.
Welcome to The Trade-Off, your daily podcast giving you the latest insight into the AFL trade period. Well, we'll do our best anyway. All thanks to Tyre Power Credit. A Tyre Power's great race sale. Buy 3 and get 1 free on selected Curnow passenger car and SUV tyres. I'm Jimmy Bartel, and this evening I'm joined by 3AW's own and AFL reporter Laura Spurway. Evening, Laura.
Hello, Jimmy. Nothing like trade on a Friday.
No, it's a wild ride every
Yes.
day, and you can see how supporters can get emotional. Of course, if your team is the team that's potentially going to be losing a player, there's nothing good enough. And if you're a team trying to inquire a player, go, oh, that's overs or that's unders, it's a very emotional time for supporters.
It's an emotional time and you're never going to get exactly what you want. And it's up to the list managers to determine what they want. And they're not always in step with the fans, are they? And I think looking at Carlton, and we were going to start with that only because they've been pretty active. They've been one of the clubs that's been most active, and there's a couple of deals done today. They lose Corey Durden to Port. He wanted to go home to South Australia. But they've picked up Ben Ainsworth, which I think is a good get for them.
Yep.
What do you reckon?
Yeah, I think he well-established player for the Gold Coast Suns. And you can see with the Suns of what they're trying to do. He probably saw, well, Christian Petrarca's coming to the side. Bailey Humphrey remains. Does that limit my opportunities as far as on ball or being that high half-forward role? And it's exactly what Carlton need. And when we touch on Carlton, they need lots of different things.
Yep.
And he's a class player. And you have a look at all the really good sides. It's multiple small to mid-sized forwards, the ability to get up and down the ground, but also hit the scoreboard. And also, when I heard Chris Davies speak today regarding Elijah Hollands, it doesn't sound good for his career. And, of course, Ainsworth can fill that gap on the half-forward line.
No, it doesn't sound good. It sounds like there's been next to no interest in Hollands from any club. And now Carlton are looking at the prospect of paying his bills for him to go nowhere, for his career to potentially be over, which is really sad for someone with that level of talent. But if they can't serve any role at your football club, if they can't get a run of games, it's pretty obvious, I think, that Graham Wright's not particularly fussed on keeping him there.
No.
Then you've basically got to get in players that are going to help you and they're going to be on the park.
Well, that's the advantage of bringing in Wright and, of course, Chris Davies. You can get sometimes really close to the players and you might have an attachment to it because they're a fresh set of eyes. I know Graham Wright's been there for a little bit, but he's really got the wheel now. And Chris Davies being new and pretty well respected football boss, so they can just take an unemotional view of it. You add to it Campbell Chesser. He was a high draft pick, and through form, injury, West Coast not going so great, we really haven't seen his talents shine the way they did at underage footy, but they get him in the door. Pick 41 heading the way of the Eagles. Carlton, very funny in, of course, the social media. When he was drafted West Coast, they found, I think, Nick Natanui's old jumper and put it on him, and Carlton played up to the gag beautifully well.
Yep, they did. Look, I don't think that's a bad acquisition for them either because they're not giving up much. So that's not a marquee name that you're getting in, but you're not losing a lot. And for me, what the Blues need to do is get some players in. It's clear that they need to revamp what's actually happening on the field and not just rely on the drafts. So it's moving. They're getting the players in. It's intriguing that they're sort of in and around that forward line because you wonder if their mentality shifted now, that they're more thinking, geez, there's a real possibility that Charlie might go.
Well, we'll talk about Charlie shortly, but we'll do the wrap-up, of course, for the day. Brody Mychek joins the Ds. Collingwood get a future third-round pick. And then you add on to the top of Bobby Hill's manager saying he'll be at the Pies next year. That's a bit of news out of Collingwood. I think it's good for Brody Mychek, and I think no Collingwood fan could begrudge Brody doing what he's doing. He's been amazing for the Pies. Came in as a defender from Port Melbourne, as a mature age recruit, and just couldn't have worked any harder on the forward line for the Pies.
And they didn't really get anything for him, but I think that was Collingwood also acknowledging that they were happy for him to get a good deal after everything he'd done. And Brody Mychek was adamant. He said, I want a 2-year contract. That's what I want. I'm 32. This could be the last 2-year deal that I get. I know what I'm worth. I'm sticking to my guns. D's were happy to offer that. And he said, look, if I only get 1-year deals after this one runs out, then that's what I get. But this to me is the last time I can negotiate that. He's got it. And I don't think there's any ill will there at all.
And I think it's good for the D's too. He can teach Jacob Van Rooyen, you know, some forward craft, work rate, take a bit of pressure off him as well. So I think that's an astute signing from the D's. You get some leadership in the door, but also it's great for Brodie and his career. The next one, look, Connor McDonald extends with Hawthorn until 2029. It mightn't seem big on the surface, but I guess when you're looking at the merit and the Hawks negotiations, there's probably one that they might have inquired about, being a highly talented player. You know, could that come back the other way? I'm not saying he was ever floated, but we're just trying to find out how that deal could potentially get done. So he extends out with the Hawks. So good news for Connor McDonald and the Hawks. We mentioned Charlie Curnow. Well, Geelong put its chips on the table. And they said
they were chips, just chips.
They were chips. They weren't yummy, big fat ones at the pub as well. You're desperate for some chips after 6 or 7 pots.
Yep.
These were, it looks good, and then you open up the bag and the bag's full of air. Sort of, here, take one of those, because 3 first-rounders sounds delicious. But when you really map it out, they're all picks in the 20s and potentially pick 30 once it gets out. So Carlton said no, but Sydney are preparing to offer players and picks for Curnow. James Rowbottom's name has been the hot name today from the Swans, but his manager Matt Bain said on the Swans' future and being part of the Curnow deal. It's that time of year clubs have asked the question and no doubt been ringing Sydney about him. He loves the club and players, and I can't see it happening. So it's always this time of year. We want all your players, and the club, once again, we've got no players available.
But this is where you make the tough calls as a club, because you say, well, our players are happy here and they're contracted. But if you really want someone, you've got to give someone up. And this is where the conversation, I think, around who holds the power is really interesting, because, lots of people have been complaining, well, contracts mean nothing. Players shouldn't have as much power as they do now. They've signed a contract. They should honour the contract. But once you get to trade period, I reckon that balance flips a lot. And we've seen that play out in recent days with the Leckerli thing. That's totally club-based in terms of who's held the chips there.
Yeah.
So this is another example for me where, clearly Sydney want him, but if they can't give a player up for him, and a decent player, they're not going to get him. Geelong's not going to get him with picks. They know that now, and I think he's worth a good player. So, yeah, Will Hayward, that's the other name.
Yeah.
We've heard that a bit.
Well, I think with the Will Hayward one where it becomes interesting, and I loved when he was asked about it. He was real about it. He just said, hey, look, if that's the way it happens, it happens. But he's probably saying, well, Charlie's probably going to take my position on the forward line. But I think a forward line for the Swans with Hayward and Curnow looks really nice as well. So we've still got quite a number of players up in the air. I'm just going to skip to Rowan Marshall because that comes off the back of Charlie Curnow. Sam Edmund reporting today does magnificent work, Sam Edmund, and clearly someone from the Saints has informed him that Rowan Marshall is going nowhere. But then we heard Andrew Mackey only about 40 minutes before we came to record this podcast saying, hey, we're still trying to work out a deal here.
Well, that's because they've said no to the Charlie deal, haven't they? So suddenly those picks are now available again, and one of them was tabled for Rowan Marshall. I mean, I think you've got to keep putting the feelers out there till the end of the trade period, don't you? I've got no doubt that the Saints don't want to let Rowan Marshall go. Their ideal scenario is that Jack Steele's not there and Rowan Marshall stays with them. But as it turns out, we're not going to take Aaliyah anymore. Maybe we don't have the cash anymore because of the moves that we've made. But, yeah, look, Rowan Marshall, to me, his role, I don't know. What do you see that looking like, Jimmy, if you've got TDK in the door?
Well, it almost says he has to start forward. But then the Saints would be hoping King is up and firing, so he wouldn't be the key forward, which that's okay. But you're sort of a second banana on the forward line, and then you're the second ruck.
Yep.
And he's a very good first ruck.
He is.
So, yeah, it'd be fascinating how they massage it. It'd be interesting to see how quickly they can gel all these Saints players together. Certainly talent through the door. Maybe if they do hold on to Marshall, I'm probably more optimistic about the Saints with all the guys coming in, but that's because I'm very positive about their young talent as well. And you give it another 12 months of young talent. I think Henry missing a lot of football hurts him because he's another line breaker, because you can't keep relying on Sinclair and Naz to be the creative types across the ground. So Henry coming in, then of course now Liam Ryan's really creative on the forward line. Flanders is a creative player, so all of a sudden now they've got some flair and dash to add to their defensive structures as well. Max Hall was a great find. So you get another 12 months. They didn't really see Philippou much throughout the year. So plenty of talent there at the Saints. I love Mitch Owens. I love the fact they re-signed Windhager.
Cal Wilkie staying.
Cal Wilkie. Jack Silvani will be good for their back six as well. So it's just how quickly they can put it all together. So, yeah, they might drop a couple early while they're gelling, but I think they'll come home with a hurry next year. So the Saints, they certainly are the talk of town. But heading to North Melbourne, Jai Simpkin, their captain, he's another captain who wants out because he wants inside mid-minutes. North Melbourne think he's a winger, where he played some pretty good football, actually. If you have a look at his numbers late in the year, he played some good football on the wing. Reports today there was some interest from Collingwood, but Collingwood don't want to pay his big contract, which is fair enough. He's on a lot of money at the moment, and North Melbourne are maybe hoping that they can get that money out.
Well, yeah, because they've been known to have the money because of the number of young players they've had. They're the other ones with cash there, but I think it's a tough call for him. There's not been a lot of interest apart from Collingwood. I mean, Collingwood hasn't made decisions on, I know they're not the same player, but Tom Mitchell yet, for example. So they've got to make some decisions themselves. But for me, North Melbourne, they've been pretty quiet. And you've mentioned that as well. They've been pretty quiet. And should they be this quiet, given the performances that we've seen again?
Well, I'm glad you raised that because that is my tough call, and our tough calls are all thanks to Grunt. No matter what you do it with Grunt. There's nothing tougher available exclusively at Bunnings. Heading to, day 5, then into week 2, of course, after the weekend where everyone puts their phones down. There'll be a lot of work over the weekend. But who needs to make a tough call? And you raised it for me. Look, I'm not saying North Melbourne should get these deals done, but I'd like to know if I'm North Melbourne that I'm exploring all options, especially with your back group. I know Brady Rawlings has made some comments around whether they'll look into Leclerc now that deal fell over with the Giants and the Saints. And I think that's a good thing. And I'm not saying you have to sign him, but I'd like them to be in the market more for their back six. And the reason being is, they've often drafted midfielders. They've started to try and address their forward line with their mid-forward types. But under Alistair Clarkson, 2023, second for points against. 2024, they're the worst defensive team. So they were second worst, second worst by a considerable margin. And then the statement, we're happy with our back group. Are you? So if you're happy with it, what are we missing here? Because I give ticks to Charlie Comben. I think I can see stuff there. Key defender, intercepts it. I like Hardiman. He's building nicely as a young halfback flanker as well. Callum Dawson has shown different things. He's tough. He's big. But you can't keep rolling out Cole, Logan, Tucker in your back six.
Yep.
It's shown. We've seen that. It didn't work for Logan Tucker at Freo. So why do we expect it was going to work at North Melbourne?
I agree. I think they should ask the question of Leclerc. And the other one that came to mind for me was Buku Khamis. From the Dogs, looking for a new home, wanted to go to Carlton. We haven't heard anything about them making any moves on him. Why doesn't North ask the question of him?
Yeah, like I said, that none of these deals, they mightn't get done or not doing it, but I just would like them to be a little bit more proactive in this space, addressing clearly a big issue, which is defence and behind the football.
Would you take Mason Cox at North?
Ooh, is this part of your tough call?
This is part of my tough call. So my tough call is I think Collingwood should let Mason go.
Yeah, I like that.
You've had him for, you've had fun. You've had fun together, but he played 5 games in the home and away before they brought him back in for the finals, I think hoping he would replicate, finals Coxie and provide those big moments. Look, didn't play too badly in finals.
Yeah, I thought he was good in the finals.
But 5 games in the home and away and, your ruck, Darcy Cameron's the Copeland medalist, if you're happy to let him celebrate that award at Collingwood. But I just think they haven't offered him another deal. I think they're stringing him along and they're stringing Tom Mitchell along until after the trade to see if they can sniff around and get a better option. Why don't you just let him go? Obviously, there hasn't been a lot of interest in him yet. Otherwise, you always hear the rumblings if there are. Let him go. He's had a good run. You could pick him up at North Melbourne. Like there'd be other clubs that would be interested in a ruck. What about Essendon?
Yeah, well, because they've had injuries, and then of course Draper leaving as well.
Todd Goldstein gone.
Yeah, Todd Goldstein's 58. We loved his year too, Todd Goldstein. I think he's got everybody in the AFL world as admired. But I'm with you. And back to the North Melbourne one, we know Mason can play forward. It takes a bit of pressure off Larky having to do everything in the air. Zerha isn't a key forward because he's the third tall forward or another mid-sized player. So you could do worse than having Mason Cox on your list.
Well, people would disagree with that because they'll say, well, now that Collingwood's lost Brody Myercheck, Mason's that other sort of tall option up front for them.
But when Brody was out this year, they didn't play.
That's right. They weren't really using him in that capacity. They'd rather sort of look at some of the younger ones. They had Membry, Charlie West, they were giving him all of the plaudits. So I think Collingwood, we know your fans love him. We're not saying we don't want to see Big Coxie play, but cut the cord.
No, I want to see him playing more AFL football. I like barracking for players. And that'd be a fascinating one to see what happens with Mason Cox. She's usually got the hang of the tough call pretty quickly, Laura. And you got the hang of this. You got the hang of this podcast beautifully well. Hopefully you enjoy your weekend. And I know over the weekend, managers and, of course, football bosses, their phones will be ringing hot. So we look forward to a very exciting Monday when the trade period picks up officially.
Yeah, we do. Only 3 more sleeps until this madness finishes.
It's going to be exciting. Thanks for all your time, Laura Spurway, and thanks everyone for listening. Join us on Monday for a full wrap and insight of another day of the 2025 trade period. All thanks to Tyre Power's great rate sale. Buy 3 and get 1 free on selected Kumho passenger car and SUV tyres.